Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me at the back okay? Yeah, you can hear me, can't you? Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Yeah, good. Another round of applause for Jack from before that. Great work. It feels quite hard to follow something like that. So I'll do my best. All right, anyway, let's do a show of hands, shall we? So hands up if you've ever bought a train ticket in the UK, trainline.com, yeah? Ever booked a hotel through Marriott.com, Ritz-Carlton? A few Ritz-Carlton people at the back, high rollers, well done. Ever bought anything on eBay? Ever done that? Returned anything on eBay? Ever done that? Yeah? All right, so you've worked on something, or you've used something that I've designed over the last 14 years of my UX career. So I've worked for a few people I mentioned there, like Trainline, Marriott, Ritz-Carlton. I worked for Disney for a while, for a money supermarket, helping to launch sort of multi-billion-dollar e-commerce sites, as well as a variety of other things. And so today I'm going to talk to you about psychology and how psychology, for me in my career, for my whole life, has informed everything that I've designed and I've worked on. So it all started for me with a book. My mother is a psychologist, all right? So just let that sink in, okay? Imagine being brought up by a psychologist. Now, I know what you're all thinking, and before you ask, yes, I am wearing a bum bag, by the way. But my mum was a psychologist, and I was 15 years old, and I found this book on her bookshelf. And I was like, imagine as a teenager finding this book. Oh, it's like, yes, finally. It's so difficult before to understand humans and emotions. Now I've got a guidebook for understanding human beings. Brilliant. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to read up. I'm going to use this at the school disco on Friday. How do you think it went when my theoretical psychology hit the real world of a teenage disco? Yeah? All right? Let me just tell you, I got married at 35, so that tells you how long it took me to figure this stuff out. I don't think I'm quite there yet. It did inform me, and I did follow my career on in psychology. So I studied neuroscience at university. Really hard. It's my one takeaway from studying neuroscience. And then I followed that on with a master's course in human-computer interaction, which I'm guessing many of you have done over the years. That was 14 years ago, and then since then I've worked with some of the companies that I've just mentioned there. So this book started my career, and it's really the basis of what I'm going to talk about today is how do you take psychology, which is messy, and us humans are messy and complicated and difficult and emotional, all of those things, and apply that to the really structured world of front-end development and HTML and CSS and design and all those things where everything just mostly seems to work. How do those two things fit together, or more importantly, how they don't? I also wrote a book myself. Anybody bought the book? Hands up. A few of you, brilliant. Anybody read it? Brilliant. I don't care if it's only £2.50, so you can buy it by all means. Don't feel like you have to read it. The best review I've got of my book so far is that it is short, all right? Which in the world of business books, if you read lots of books, you know what I mean. Often they just go on and they go on. Anyway, mine doesn't. That's not really the best way to sell a book. Anyway, hopefully from today I'll talk a bit more about why you should think about buying my book in the future. Anyway, I've also series editor of a series of some books from SitePoint on analytics and UX, forms and UX, prototyping and UX. We just launched one on research. These are great for getting you up to speed on the stuff you need to know. The analytics one especially is really good for all of us who want to get a bit more data stuff in our world. So I managed and edited these 4 books now. But as many of you, I've spent the last 14 years doing and solving these sorts of problems for our users, okay? Very, very different end of the spectrum to the stuff that Jack was talking about, but still emotionally charged. And I think emotion is a really strong point and factor in human psychology. This is some of the stuff that I've started to try and fix. And what I do for my clients these days are these 3 things. So I help and I coach product and UX teams to do the right things in the right order for the right reasons. All right? That's pretty much what I do now. So I'm working at the moment with Raspberry Pi Foundation, some educational stuff for them, for Alfresco, a software development company, Booking.com. It's a variety of people to do this kind of stuff. That's me right at the moment in time. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is this framework that I've been using over the last however many years to help define and understand the challenges that people are facing from a psychological point of view to use the product you're designing. And this talk comes in 2 halves. And do you know what? Like most business books, or most UX books, the first part of the book is basically a massive introduction to the thing you want to get to. And you just really want to get to the meat of it, don't you? There was a big thing in there that's saying, just read these 3 chapters and you'll be fine. So what I'm going to do with my talk is rather than give you the whole preamble about where I came up with this, my journey here, I'm going to go straight to the meat of it and give you 2 strategies to use psychology to better improve your digital products and your digital experiences. So 2 strategies. And I've got 25 minutes and 2 seconds to do that in. All right, so let's talk about part 1. How to use psychology to design better products, all right? Okay, Wikipedia. What a lovely website Wikipedia is. This is Wikipedia from about 2010. Reese Witherspoon's birthday, if you care about such things. And they were just about to go through a redesign. But beforehand, look, there's one beautiful thing I want to point out to you. Look at that beauty down there. Let me zoom that in. Just take that in. All right? Instinctively, right, you all know that's bad, don't you? You're like, that is wrong on so many levels. This was on, back in 2010, 1 billion people were using Wikipedia back in 2010. All right, 1 billion people were struggling with this horrific UI, okay? Let me explain to you how this works. Anytime you've got to explain a UI, you know it's bad. You type in Reese Witherspoon, you hit go, it goes to Reese Witherspoon's page. You type in Reese Witherspoon and you hit search, you get all of her wonderful films, all the pages that she's mentioned in. So Legally Blonde 1, Legally Blonde 2, is there Legally Blonde 3? I don't know. Anyway, you get a list of all the pages that mention her. That's how this works. But from a UX point of view, bad. We all get that, don't we? So Wikipedia, and I thought, well, you know, looking at this, from a psychological point of view, how can we frame why this is bad? How can we frame from a psychological point of view how to do it, to give a framework to critique the organisation, to say this is bad, rather than going this is really bad. We can talk about 2 calls to action, all of that UX-y language. How can we use psychology to frame what the problem is? So it took me back to school again. Again, I feel like, you know, as a psychologist, I'm sharing a lot about my early childhood with you guys here today. I feel like there should be a couch in the corner where I'm lying down. Back to school. Anyway, this is me. I really struggle with the points of a compass, right? Anybody have that problem here? Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm not alone. North and south, easy, right? We can do those ones. That right? No. How do you remember the points of a compass? Yes, never eat shredded wheat. Probably have similar things if you're not English in your own language. Everyone around the world, if you're American, it's never eat soggy waffles. It's good advice. But you get it. This is how, in essence, how our brains are wired from a psychological perspective to remember things. We're dreadful at remembering facts, so we take facts, we contextualise them into sequences. And sequences are a common framework within neuroscience and psychology that you can use to explain what's going on. So, facts, declarative knowledge, humans, we are bad at this stuff, really bad at this stuff. What is the capital of Uganda, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, thank you. Very, very good. Not an easy question to do. It takes a lot of cognitive load to answer that question. That is classic declarative knowledge. Knowing facts is hard. It takes a lot of mental power to do it. You're thinking, oh, that's hard, mental power. We as humans are really bad at facts, unless you're a software engineer. They tend to be pretty good at this stuff, which is why they always don't get it. Sorry if you're a software engineer. Nothing against you, but you're not normal, are you? Oh, God, there's a lot of you. You're not all software engineers, are you? Blimey, you're a hard audience, aren't you? Anyway, let's keep going. So yeah, these are declarative, these are facts. We're not so good at this, all right? But again, if you work in the sciences, if you're a software engineer, you've been educated to be good at facts. But the population as a whole, we are dreadful at facts. What we are good at as a population, as humans, is sequences, okay? So never eat shredded wheat. Step 1 helps you remember step 2, helps you remember step 3, helps you remember step 4. You have a contextualization around the outside of it to wrap it up so it's something easy for you to remember. Do you know any more of these? Screwdriver, which way do you turn the screwdriver to tighten it? Righty-tighty and lefty-loosey, you get it. How do you remember the names of the planets in order? What's that one? I wish I had my notes on the screen. I ain't got my notes on the screen, so I can't tell you, but there is a really good acronym for it if you're that way inclined. How do you remember the name, what happened to the wives of Henry VIII? Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, okay? Similarly, we're contextualising it. Each step helps us remember the next step, helps us remember the next step, helps us remember the next step. Classic cognitive psychological theory of procedural knowledge. This is how we structure the world around us, okay? I'm happy to talk about this stuff at length. There's a great paper that was written last week about exactly this from a neuroscience perspective, so there's an awful lot of evidence about how this stuff works for us humans. But common sense-wise, this is how you'll get, yeah, I get this. So 2 types of knowledge. Declarative knowledge, difficult. Procedural knowledge, easier and structured. All right, so 2 phone unlock styles. One of these is declarative and one of these procedural. So we've got Apple over here. This one here, is this declarative, remembering the number, or procedural? It's declarative. You have to remember the number. I used to be a primary school teacher. If I get a bit of primary school teacher with you, all right, I'm really, really sorry. If you need a wee, put your hands up, only one at a time. It's declarative. You have to remember that number. Now, the other one over here, which is the Android, when we draw a shape, declarative or procedural? It is procedural. The shape helps you remember what's going on. Step 1 reminds you of step 2, reminds you of step 3, reminds you of step 4, and so on. Now, you can use procedural knowledge over time to make your passcode, like 1834, not mine. The pattern of doing that becomes procedural. You remember the pattern of doing it in your head. It stops becoming a number that you can pull out of your head and becomes a process. So you're encoding it from declarative to procedural. That's why the Android one is far easier to use than the Apple one. From a security point of view, however, where do 99% of Android passcodes start? Top left. Where do they go next? Right from there. You know that because, again, that's how we were taught to write as adults when we grew up. Again, if you're Arabic speaking or Hebrew speaking, where do they start? Top left. There's a lot of cultural elements to it. So again, procedural knowledge means stuff's more guessable, but it's much more human. Declarative is much harder to understand, much harder to implement from a human point of view, but people are bad at it. It's just why they write their passwords on Post-it notes. This is why people write their passwords on Post-it notes. Okay? All right, let's keep going. Back to Wikipedia then. How does this apply to the search box on Wikipedia? So we need to look at the sequence of steps that people go through to search. So where would you look for a search box on a website? Where would you look for one? Top right. You're good, aren't you? Good you UX people, yes. What are you looking for up there? I'm showing you behind me, it's here. All right, I feel like I'm taking an idea. You're looking for a search box, aren't you? You're looking for a place to type something in. And most important of all, what are you looking for next? A button. Of course you are. The steps you go through to do these things are really, really important. If you've ever done user research on form submissions, I've done an awful lot for people like Money Supermarket, you're all thinking, yeah, but I just hit enter. We don't need a button. We don't need a button. What do so many people do in user research when it comes to submitting forms? What do? On the mobile, they dismiss the keyboard and press the enter button with their finger. On a computer, they'll take their fingers off the keyboard and go to the tracker pad and try and hit the button. They don't press enter. They don't do it through a keyboard point of view. So in taking the button away, you're breaking people's procedural knowledge flows. All right? Step 1 is to look top right. Step 2 is to type something in a box. Step 3 is to hit the button. Classic search interface, okay? This is the procedural knowledge flow that people expect to see from search, okay? You've seen this many, 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 many times, don't you? I helped redesign the search for eBay. It started like this. How do you think it ended in that redesign process? Just like this, yeah? We didn't change it because there's no point changing search, all right? If search, the interface, the interaction works, don't break it. There's no point doing that, okay? This is the correct way, using procedural knowledge to understand why something happens and to critique when something's really, really bad. So now we've got some language to understand why this little bad boy over here is really, really bad. Okay, so this is what psychologists call, or a terminology we call axioms. And axioms are, yeah, this is good stuff to write down. So you want to write some stuff down. This is gold, by the way, all right? Look, you're all taking photos. See, look. My mum would love this. My mum would love this. She doesn't quite know what I do. So an axiom is a statement or proposition which is regarded as being true. Something we can all agree is something in terms of a design pattern that's going to work. It's different from a design pattern. A design pattern is a way of doing something. A design axiom is the most well-understood way of doing it across the population. Difficult to prove if it's correct or not, but on the whole it's true. Good example of a design axiom is what happens when you click on the logo of any website or app. What do you expect to happen? Go back to the home page or the front page of that app or that website. That is a classic design axiom, all right? You wouldn't innovate and do anything different with that, would you? You wouldn't break that. That's a classic procedural knowledge flow based on a design axiom telling you how to start that flow, all right? Navigation on a desktop website, where's it go? Top. Yeah, you wouldn't put it at the bottom, would you? That'd be a crazy thing to do, unless you're on mobile, and then there's other reasons why you do it. But again, placing things in certain places works. If you're going to put on a desktop, because desktop's bigger, you've got loads more space, where would you put if you're an e-commerce site, where would you put the shopping cart? Top right, yeah, absolutely. You all know that instinctively. That's a design axiom, is putting the shopping cart on the top right. Procedural knowledge flows start from that. People are going up to the top right to look for it if they want to check what's in their basket. Don't mess with this stuff. Don't innovate in this way, okay? Just use design axioms, a well-trodden path to design your UIs. There's no point innovating in this space because all you're going to do is annoy people and they'll go to your competitor because your competitor's probably doing it the right way. All right? No point. Use this stuff. Use this language to help you understand and talk about it with your teams. All right. What about this thing? Is this bad boy? Is this a design axiom? The hamburger menu? No. It's one of the worst things to happen to UI design in the last 20 years. Well, 15 years. I can justify it and say 15 years. Dreadful. All right? I worked with the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Very lovely client to work with. Everybody in all the meetings, like Jack, wore black. Lots of intense glasses. Lovely people to work for. Obsessed with white space. We made one big change, because they had big lines, queues, as we call them over here, outside of MoMA. They wanted to reduce queues. We've got the before and the after. Which one of these two sold more tickets? Yeah, right. You don't need an A/B test to tell you this, do you? All right? Common sense, a framework of psychology to explain it, axioms, procedural knowledge, is enough to convince people this is the way to do it. And sure enough, sold more tickets when they went away from the white space-induced thing on the left to the much, much more usable thing on the right. Okay? Much, much more successful. Lines went down, they sold more tickets, everybody was more happy, win-win round, high fives for everybody. All right, back to our friends at Wikipedia then. Oh, I will tell you a little bit about the hamburger menu. I designed it for Marriott. We used it brilliantly at Marriott because we had a lot of stakeholders at Marriott, bless them. We had the guy whose main responsibility was to sell duvets to people. We had the Marriott store. We had the Marriott timeshare people. We had the Marriott business rewards team. We had the Marriott... there were hundreds of them in these stakeholders. We introduced a hamburger menu to do what? Hide all of the crap we didn't want to deal with in the organisation. We lovingly referred to it as stakeholder debt. If you're familiar with technical debt, stakeholder debt is a good one as well. All right, back to Wikipedia then. So they redesigned. Are you ready to see the redesign? They redesigned the search box. I love that I'm building some tension for redesign that happened 5 years ago on the site all of you have used, probably in the last 24 hours. OK, here it is. There it is. One on Wikipedia. All right, it's not bad. It's not brilliant. It's in the right place. There's a search box. There's no button. We discussed why that was a problem. They've introduced a button subsequently. This is the redesign that they went with. So a lot better in terms of procedural knowledge. And then, do you know what they want? They wrote one of those beautiful blog posts to say, why we redesigned the search box? High-fiving each other in the design team. Yeah, go team, well done. They wrote that blog post, published it, opened the comments up, said, comment on a lovely new design. And you know what? What happened? Did existing users of Wikipedia love the new search box? No, they hated it. Brilliantly, here were some of the comments. There are hundreds of them on that website, on that comment, on that blog post. 97% of all people want the search box on the left side, so when will this finally be fixed? Search on the left, please, left, please, left, please. Why did this happen? They already had existing procedural knowledge flows of how a broken search interface works. So a lot of these people, Wikipedia had taught a lot of people how search worked. They were going to other websites and going, oh, this is rubbish. There's not even a go button here. Dreadful way of doing things. But that's the way it worked. Wikipedia had existing procedural knowledge team, and George Schultz is an editor, a very, very prolific editor on Wikipedia. Of course he's going to hate it. It breaks all of his workflows, shifting it to a different place. It breaks his existing procedural knowledge he's learned on Wikipedia. So this tells you, and this is one of the big things I do for one of my clients, take my details now. I specialise in helping it when you relaunch and it all goes horribly wrong. All right? And it does. It will happen to you at one point in your career. Take my details. I rescue companies and organisations from this. Because what happens 3 weeks after this? Did anybody care? No. What is the worst thing that Wikipedia could have done? Moved it back. You've got to understand that people hate change. This is why they hate change, because you're breaking their procedural knowledge flows. They hate change. What you've got to do as an organisation is understand and teach your stakeholders based on psychology, they're going to hate change. This is why. But in a few weeks, they'll have built new procedural knowledge flows and it'll be fine. This is much better for new users than it is for existing users because they're new to it. They're like, oh, I get this. This is really easy to use. This is what I'm used to. Again, the worst thing you can do is when a change goes live is not warn your bosses that people are going to not like it because it's new, and then they change it back, and then your whole organisation is never going to change anything ever again. You might as well get a new job, get out of UX, go and live in a cave. It's a bit extreme, but anyway. Anyway, I promised you some innovation, didn't I? So in the last 10 minutes, I'm going to talk to you now about how to use psychology to innovate. I'm going to have a little sip of water while you just take in everything that I've told. Don't go live in a cave. It's fine. It's never going to be that bad. Yeah. So two of the clients I've worked with on redesigns were when something went live, they got a Daily Mail article written about the mistakes that had happened when it went live. Because it was changing and everybody hated it and they wrote to the Daily Mail about that stuff. So if you've got a huge audience base, warn your bosses that that's going to happen because people hate change, all right? Anyway, back to innovation. So I've basically told you the first part today. Just go and copy every single other website out there when it comes to UI. Just copy it, all right? Do that, and I'm going to stick with that. UI is not the place to innovate. It never is. It never should be the place to do it. You innovate in the experience of what you're designing. Let's talk about how that can work in terms of coffee. Oh. This is a beautiful coffee shop on the north bank of the Seine in Paris. Oh, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? There's a design axiom, or an axiom in this coffee shop that tells you how to behave. And he stood at the front there and dressed in black and white, okay? He's a waiter. What does the waiter tell you to do? You see the waiter. What immediately happens in your brain, in your subconscious when you see the waiter? What do you know you have to do at this coffee shop? You have to sit down. Well, wait to be seated or sit down. You know that, okay? Instinctively, that happens, okay? Then you go through the process of ordering your coffee. Now, what this waiter does is he will treat you differently if you're British, American, maybe Dutch, than if you're French, Italian, or Spanish. Okay, he will ask you to pay earlier in the process because he has lots of problems with British and American and Dutch people leaving without paying. Why? They're not used to it, exactly. So what happens at somewhere like this is you go and you sit down, you hold the waiter, brings you the menu, cafes, if you play, sorry for my bad French. Drink your coffee, you have to ask for the bill, please. The bill comes, you pay, and you leave, okay? Typical way of doing it. Ever been in those situations in places like this, you think, before you leave, have I paid? Have we paid? Have I paid? Have we paid? Again, why? And it all comes down to our American chums. God, such an English way of saying something, isn't it? At Starbucks, yeah? You all know Starbucks? You familiar with Starbucks? Do you have Starbucks in London? I'm from Bristol, I'm not sure. Of course you do. What is the design axiom in Starbucks that tells you how to behave? What's the first thing you see when you walk in the door? The queue or the counter. It's right there. It tells you, oh, it's one of those where I've got to queue. You queue up. Order your coffee. When do you pay? When you bought the coffee, okay? So that's the reason why. Is you've got a mental model of how Starbucks works. You've all been taught how to drink coffee by Starbucks. When you take that mental model of behaviour and you apply it to a new and novel situation like a French cafe, you make mistakes. You feel uncomfortable. You're not quite sure how it works. Maybe you're aware of why you're feeling uncomfortable, but it's just often a deep-seated feeling a bit weird that this isn't right. Oh, have we paid? This is strange. What happens next? Why has he done that? Why is he doing this? Why is he treating... All of this stuff is happening because your mental model of how you do something, and this is how we work as humans. We take models of the world and we apply them to new and novel and interesting situations. We take existing models of the world and we go, oh, I've got that one, I'm going to apply it to this one. We take, and it works a very, very basic case with coffee shops. So what happened when Starbucks opened their first coffee shop in Paris? What was the big problem they had to do? What did everybody go and do in Paris, or many people go and do? Yeah, they went in and sat down and went, oh, what's going on? The service is rubbish. I thought these Americans were really on it with coffee. I'm not going to do it in a bad French accent, but you get the point. Because they had a mental model of how coffee shops worked from here, so Starbucks had to put signs on the table saying, please order at the counter. And they had to replace those signs and say, please order and pay at the counter. Because again, the mental models weren't right. It's a huge thing when it comes to design. So how can we do that and improve our products based on this theory? It doesn't have to be a massive, enormous customer experience map you spend weeks building, agencies that will sell you those things. It's a really, really straightforward way of doing some very, very quick research to understand how people do stuff. And I'm going to take the example of going away for the weekend on holiday. So, some questions and some thoughts we all have, and I've done a lot of user research in the travel world about what we do. So we might ask, the first question we might ask is, what kind of trip do you fancy? Do you fancy the beach, city, ski, spa? What kind of trip do you fancy? So far, so good? Yeah, I fancy something relaxing. Or, I want to spend some money, do some shopping, I want to go to the city. Those are the conversations you have when you're booking something. Then you might talk about when. Oh, let's go the weekend in May. Yeah, the 1st or the 3rd, because my cousin's wedding's on the 2nd. Yeah, that makes sense. For a long weekend, what's the official day a long weekend starts? See, that's a strict question. There's no official day a long weekend starts. Maybe it's a Thursday, maybe it's a Friday, maybe it's to a Sunday, maybe it's to a Monday. A long weekend varies depending on what travel you can get, how much time you can get off work. Okay? A long weekend is not defined. All right? A long weekend for our American chums is about, 2:30 on Saturday afternoon to about 9 o'clock Sunday morning. Bless them, they don't get any time off. Other things you might want to avoid when it comes to time. Do you want to travel, if you and your partner are travelling, do you want to travel in school holidays? Oof, no, you want to know when they are, don't you? So you can either avoid it or book it, depending on if you have kids or not. You want to know when they are. Stuff we hear all the time in user research when it comes to travel. Other things. Travel. So what do people say? Oh, do you know, should we go 400 miles away or 500 miles away? Oh, no, I think maybe 250 miles away. How do we measure time when it comes to travel? Hours. We say, oh, let's fly off, maybe fly for 2-3 hours. That sounds about right. Or drive for 2 or 3 hours. Perfectly normal conversation people have about travel. They never say about miles, never talk about that. So you end up with conversations around something like this, where they'll say, these are the things that are going on in people's heads when they're booking travel, and this is the output. Let's go to the beach, fly maybe 3 hours on the first or third weekend in May. Sound pretty logical as an output for a travel conversation? Right. What happens when it hits the real world? This is Wikipedia. Not Wikipedia, Expedia. Oh. Sorry if you're from either Expedia or Wikipedia. I've worked with you if you've worked from Expedia before. Have a look at this. How are they doing? Based on that mental model, how are they doing? They're doing some good things. They've got beaches, they've got city breaks, they've got some good stuff at the top there. What about long weekends? Is that long weekend friendly? DDMMYYYYY? No? It's dreadful. You can't put a long weekend into that. You can't say Thursday or Friday, it's a Sunday or Monday, first or third weekend away. Wouldn't it be lovely to have a button that said, avoid school holidays? That would be great. And nothing says holiday more than city or airport. Clearly, business analyst has had their play in this one. You get the point, all right? This is the stuff people want, and this is the reality of what they get. The two are not there. All right? Now, from a UI point of view, button's nice, search is good, layout is great, navigation's in the right place. From an interaction and procedural knowledge point of view, fantastic. But from a mental model point of view, really poor. I mean, they've got some good stuff going on. You've basically got to know where you want to go to Expedia, so I'm doing them a disservice, but you get the point. And you're starting to think now, oh, I can see some great ideas coming from that one sentence at the top about how to innovate in the travel space. If you are thinking about it, I would love some equity in your startup. So mental models are evaluative, okay? You can evaluate your competition based on the mental model of how your users expect to do a task. And it's not around what colour their search box is or what colour their button is. That stuff's easy. We talked about that at the start. That's just like building a Lego set. To create something new, interesting, and novel, you have to move beyond that to the wider context of what people are doing and ask the difficult questions. As Jack said before, go and do your research. Get close to your users to understand their mental model, okay? This stuff is the stuff you need to innovate in your product. Right, some ideas for the new innovations for Wikipedia. Give me some ideas. What would be a great way to search for holidays? Yeah, perfect. Search for holidays by 3 hours away. Show me beaches 3 hours away from where I live. Okay? I live in Bristol. Show me beaches 3 hours away from where I live by flying. On Thursdays, flying out on Thursdays, coming back on Mondays. That would be fantastic. A map just showing you the radius of beaches within 3 hours of you would be fantastic. A long weekend finder would be amazing for finding weekends away. Avoiding school holidays is an innovation tool. Just suck all the dates of school holidays and tell your users when they are. Skyscanner do it, but you have to fight through the graphs and all that crazy stuff to find it. That's where pure innovation for products comes from, and the ideas that come out of really simple exercises like this. So, mental models are evaluative and they are generative. They can generate innovative ideas. So by understanding the psychology of how people build models of the world, you can innovate and generate new ideas for your company. It's not difficult. It's just going and asking and understanding the right questions and watching people doing it. It doesn't have to be hugely laden with outputs and documents and agencies and all that sort of stuff. It's just simple stuff to do. So, before I finish, ladies and gentlemen, today, do take this away. I mean, you can eat shredded wheat. Sorry if you work for shredded wheat. I didn't mean to take this personally. Something to take away from today is a designer who doesn't understand psychology is going to be no more successful than an architect who doesn't understand physics. And the same is true if you're a product manager or a software engineer. All of you, yeah, from one from my mum, please. She loves this one. 140 characters, although the limit's gone now. You get the point. This stuff is going to help you fundamentally change the way you work. From offloading all of your effort in innovating in UI, just follow the basics of that, to coming up and generating new ideas from mental models to push your product and your service to the next level, all can come from psychology. A really straightforward approach to doing both those things. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's me for today. Thank you very much for your time. So give me a clap now. Thank you. Everything is up here on my slides. Come on, yeah, hold on a minute up there. Steady on, chaps. My slides are up there. My email's there. Drop me a line if you want to get implementing some of this. Follow me on Twitter. I'm not as funny on Twitter as I am in real life. Saying that, you guys didn't find many of my jokes funny anyway. Everything's up here. Stay in touch. Drop me an email. Let me know how you're getting on. I'm around for the whole of today. Come and say hello. I'd love to talk to you about what you're working on right now. Come and say hello. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.